I sit down?
I'm not ready. I should be ready. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Acton Aguadose Unified School District Board meeting of March 12, 2020. We are reconvening our regular meeting after we return from closed session at 7:31. We will move on to the flag salute. Mr. Logan Martin, would you lead us in the flag salute, please? Excuse me, that is not the same Martin that was they did it the last time.
Put
Ready?
your hand over your heart. Now, ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, you're a fine young man. You can pay me later.
Yay, Logan.
Do we have public comments and recognition or reports? Do you have any recognition or reports?
No, not at this time.
Mr. Tom Costan.
Yeah. Hello, Tom Costin. I think I've got about 3 minutes of good news for everybody. So, you know, we worked on our SRTS, Safe Route to School grant. In the past, we scored maybe a 79, and I don't think any money was given to any entity that scored less than like 89. But that's coming back around. The town council's been contacted by Public Works, by Abu Youssef, and they are very driven to get this grant money to work on this project again. And we had a discussion with them, and they were coming up with ideas and maybe some possibilities on how we need to score higher, and also to enlarge the scope of the project. So if you remember before, we were trying to get from High Desert School to the library. Now we're looking at High Desert School to the library, and from High Desert School down to the district office and across to the park, as for the scope for the project. Scoring wise, we're going to need community help, community input. So at a certain point, I'm thinking we're going to talk to your staff and the board here to help reach the public, because you got your little robo-dialer machine. We also need to work on non-transport projects, such as like bicycles, riding, training, education, that kind of thing. So I think we're going to ask for your help there as well. And just any general community help. If anybody wants to volunteer to do research, volunteer to do any kind of work on this, just contact the town council and we'll be happy to put you on board. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Oh, just one thing. I think July 1st is when the application needs to be in. So we're not quite as time crunched as we were last time.
Thank you. What a good example. 1 minute and 12 seconds left. Everyone worked for that.
Well, there you go.
Yes, thank you. Plus what you said was substantial. I like that as well. Reports and correspondence. AATA representative, may we hear from you now? Seeing none. 8.02 CSEA representative, may we hear from you now? Seeing none. 8.03 student representative to the board, Ms. Fox.
Okay, so at Metal Art, Walk Through California is taking place in the library tomorrow from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. At High Desert on Wednesday the 11th, there was a Star-based class from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then, I'm not sure if a lot of this stuff is still happening just because of everything going on, but Handbells and Dancing Feet have been having practices that take place throughout the week. And tomorrow there's a Medal of Honor Awards. And so the 5th and 6th grade awards are from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 7th and 8th are from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. And then at Best Guys, I'm just going to read the events that happened in the last couple of weeks. So boys volleyball played Little Rock on the 2nd and Fillmore on the 5th. And they had a tournament at AV High School on the 7th. And then boys volleyball also played AV at home on the 9th and won. On the 3rd, softball and baseball teams played away at Lone Pine, and varsity baseball played Desert on the 5th. JV baseball played Palmdale on the 7th, and there was a swim meet at Cascade Sports Complex on the 6th. So that's all I have for this week.
Thank you very much. 8.04 The superintendent gold standard report.
Okay, so we have about 7 items here to go through. First piece I'd like to update on is falls under gold standard 4.2, having to do with student safety and connectedness. Of course, I'm going to be talking about the coronavirus under that piece. I want to let the board know and the public know that we receive information on a daily basis at this point. So we receive information from the Department of Health Services. We receive updates from Dr. Duarte's office, LA County Superintendent. And within those communications, some things are directives, and some things are guidelines, and some things are under advisory. We are now in a what's called scenario 2, and scenario 2 outlines a number of things that school districts must do. And so I'm going to go through some of those things, which I'm also going to have in a written format on our website. We've been updating our website, and so as these updates change and the restrictions become greater, we continually modify the documents that are available online, either as a link or as a letter. But this will be a letter to the community that I'm wanting to have available online and at the school sites as well. And I'll also add, just before sharing some of these things, that an all-call went out tonight from all 3 school sites that also reflects what's in this letter as well. So on Wednesday, the World Health Organization officially declared that coronavirus is now a pandemic. In California, officials are recommending that schools move from virus containment procedures to a mitigation approach. At the moment, no individuals within our school district have been tested positive. I'm actually not aware of any in the Antelope Valley. That doesn't mean that there aren't, I'm just not aware of any cases. The term social distancing, so when we came in, even as a board and superintendent, and when I saw Mr. Castan, a lot of elbow, right? So our students were teaching me that a few days ago. So I saw them, they approached me, they kind of did the elbow thing, so did teachers. So I think that's a good thing. At this time, our district is postponing or canceling all public events that bring large groups of students, adults, and community members together. Alternative approaches to these events, which limit close contact, may include assemblies via intercom announcements or conducting events online. Our district is restricting visitors to schools, including volunteers. Parent conferences will be conducted by phone or as another method is determined by your child's teacher. Our district will be postponing or canceling all field trips at this time. So that would include Starbase. The only exception would be our outdoor science trip, which is scheduled for, I don't have the date for that. We're canceling the trips through May 1st, but for the outdoor science school at Aadusd, we're still waiting for further direction from LA County Department of Public Health. First week in April? Okay, thanks. Okay, and so that's one exception to that canceling of the field trips. All athletics and extracurricular activities will not be held at this time for the same reasons, and that will be through spring break, which begins April 13th. And this is in line not just with, so we're not making these decisions in a vacuum. These are the same decisions being made at districts throughout the county. In addition, the league that we play in had already canceled all sporting events through April 11th. So these are decisions that are being made by many organizations for the same reasons, through the same organizations that work from above. We'll continue to provide information each day or each week as we need to modify and perhaps increase the restrictions or decrease the restrictions as we see fit and as we align with the Department of Health Services and the county. So board. Many of these things just came to light. Decisions were made even within the past hour, and I'll even say within the past 30 minutes, as we discussed prom. So with the high school prom, I know students are going to be asking about that, and Ms. Fox, you're welcome to share that the same way. We're going to kind of do that on a day-by-day basis. So at this point, I understand the prom is being locally held at, I think, a winery.
It's near the winery.
Near a winery?
Yeah, it's called Paradise Gardens.
Okay, I was assuming we would be serving wine, but that's near a winery.
I will guarantee you they will not.
But there's other factors that come into play with that. So for instance, it's a local venue. It's our same students, so we're not taking students to the, Beverly, Biltmore, or some organization where there'd be a lot of other people present. It's not that scenario. Questions like, is it indoor or is it outdoor? Sounds like it's outdoor with a tent, so I'm not sure. So we just kind of go day by day, and it depends on what directives that venue receives. So that venue telling us you can't come here for the prom anymore would be different than us deciding on our own. So we're going to manage it kind of on a day-by-day basis, and Mr. Brockway will certainly keep the students well informed. Okay, so, and please tell students we apologize. This is not the education that we want for any of you, but we also want to protect you, and when we say safety first, we have to act like we really mean what we say. So we appreciate your patience. On behalf of all students.
One question.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, the prom is on or the prom is off, recognizing it can go either way, just as you said. I'm just curious what this point in time is.
So I would say if you need a definitive, I'd say it's on.
At this point in time.
At this point in time, subject to calls we're going to make tomorrow.
Okay.
So we're going to do some phone calling tomorrow. Mr. Brockway's going to do some follow-up. We do have money already invested in that, which by contract is non-refundable, except for things that go beyond our control, like natural disasters, which this could be deemed one of those things, depending on how it plays out over the next couple weeks.
What's the date for the prom? Is it May?
It's April 4th.
Oh, April 4th?
It's an early prom. Okay, so, Mr. President, that concludes my safety piece. Let me go to my next comment, which is in alignment with Gold Standard 4.0, our facilities update. I think everything I shared at the last board meeting still applies, so I really don't have anything new on facilities. So that's kind of one of our standing items, so we still have that slide there, but I guess I'll just thank Ernesto. He's really done an outstanding job. And I will comment in alignment with the coronavirus, actually, that he's done a great job working with Ms. David in just keeping our classrooms extra clean. So they're spending more time in the classrooms and making it a priority to sanitize the desks in the rooms. So just a thank you to Ernesto for that. The LCAP update, alignment with Gold Standard 2.0. So just a brief update on that. We will be sending out a survey on Monday to our stakeholders, which is part of being in compliance with the LCAP. So I just wanted to let the board know that. And Ms. David, and Dr. Bice, our update for the board is coming March 26th?
Correct.
Okay.
At which point all of the information that's shared with the board will be shared out with staff members, classified and certificated, booster clubs, PTOs, general community, ELAC, DLAC, all the different stakeholder groups.
Perfect, perfect. So that's the LCAP piece. I want to thank, in alignment with Gold Standard 3.2, I'd like to thank PTSO and Ms. Martin, who's here this evening, for their continued campaign on Know Your District. For last Monday, they brought in Nicole Salcedo, who it was a great discussion. She provided a lot of information about what happens in the counseling office, supports that we provide for students, interventions, how we handle particular disciplinary matters. And Ms. Saucedo is, we're very thankful to have her in this district, as we've been down one counselor for some time now. She's just been a trooper, willing to be everywhere, and really doing an outstanding job for the school district. And thank you, Ms. Martin, for your continued efforts on your district. We have good conversations in that room. So the next piece is John Carippo. Unfortunately, he could not make it today. So he is a truly transformative in the world of education. He was originally the CEO of Q, and he's now the Director of Academic Innovation for Q. So the Q conference, which was scheduled for next week, Wednesday through Saturday, if you recall, we've had a group of teachers and administrators go each year along with Alex and Caesar. This year, of course, the conference is canceled. So they're going to do an online virtual Q this year, next week. John, being very proactive and considerate of our district, was not feeling well last night, and so he canceled his visit today just to make sure he wouldn't get any of us sick, just in case. And so he will reschedule that visit, but I want to thank the Professional Development Council, made up of both teaching staff and administrators, for really putting their heads together this afternoon, because they already had that time blocked out to meet with John to talk about lesson planning in terms of the coronavirus and providing instruction to our students and some alternatives should we end up having to close our schools for any period of time. But I appreciate everybody's effort on that PD council. Next to last piece is the Stay Gold Senior Scholarship and Volunteer Luncheon. We have, all the students have their applications. We've been getting applications coming in, and they're looking good. So we are going to have folks from Acton and Aadusd Women's Club who do not have children or grandchildren in our district evaluate these applications, as well as the mini grants for our teachers. So the kind of, to some of, speaks to our community engagement piece of the gold standard number 3, when we talk about engaging in business partnerships, working with community stakeholders. It's a good way to bring people in who don't have kids or grandchildren in our schools to say, hey, take a look at some of our applications that our seniors are writing, and give them some directions and criteria for how to rank them. And then those winners will be afforded an opportunity to attend the luncheon, the parent volunteer luncheon. And we'll also have some alternate winners. So if any of the 5 don't get into the program that they were supposed to get into, one of those alternates would then receive that scholarship position and the $500 that goes along with that. So we look forward to presenting those on April 7th. And lastly, we have a video for you that I really want to thank Jake Van Ornum and Heather Lundquist for putting this video together. I think they did a great job. And you see the gold standard alignment there. In terms of the Polar Plunge, was a fundraising venue, but it was also, as we've talked about, a community effort that I think will be highlighted in this video.
They be patient with us and with the conditions. Much of the, and the students, students and parents, of course, and staff, but much of what we or the administration does is recommended by, or what we do or don't do, is recommended by people who know more than us. And we have to follow that guidance as it comes down. And I think throughout this, just like the power outage thing, right? It's like, well, the power outages were very inconvenient, but we also had far fewer fires in the last fire season than many, many previous years. And so there's this balance. In this case, we'll never know, except maybe we'll know through hindsight. But is it an overreaction, whatever the leaders ask us to do? Is it an underreaction? Nobody knows. We're all trying to work our way through this. And so it's just going to take patience. And I'm grateful that our district staff is looking and monitoring the guidance that's being flowed to us and acting accordingly. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Brandon?
So I just want to say thank you to Larry, Wanda, all our district staff, our staff down at Meadowlark, Kim Shaw for stepping in. Everyone that came to the elections, I'm normally personally a vote by mail voter. It makes my life a lot easier, but this time around with all the issues in the voting center, I made it a point to go down there. I was stopped like 4 times by security with them walking in the gate, which made me really happy just to see that we had the extra security there. We had the precautions in place and everything was followed through. I got a chance to talk to Ms. Shaw for a little bit, and honestly, I couldn't have been happier with the way it was all carried out. For what was unfortunately kind of thrown to us, we made the best of a bad situation with how everything laid out, and it was amazing to see that we could actually get that plan in place and guarantee the safety of our students. So thank you guys for that. Tess, welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to be back.
And that's all I got.
Tim?
Well, first I want to welcome Tess back. It's great to see you back in the audience. We wish you all the best, and we're glad you're back with us because we need your guidance.
Yeah.
With regards to the changes that we're having with our prom for our high school seniors and juniors, I know that that's an important time for them, but I trust that you'll be doing the right thing because we have to do our part. This is nothing that is planned. Everybody's got to pitch in. As I travel around the AV going to my candidates at the different schools, one thing I'm struck with is like I only see a few places where they're actually taking any proactive action in the classroom with regards to giving supplies to the staff and students with regards to hand sanitizer. So I'm trusting that, because I know I used to buy my own, but I think at the sites, we're providing those to all the staff, teachers, that they have a sanitizer and the kids know appropriately how to use those. I just want to make sure that we're keeping ahead of that we don't get caught behind. Hand washing is huge. I was talking and I watched something the other day on there at the elementary level. They were actually taking the time to embed it in instruction that students learn to wash their hands, because students notoriously are bad at that, touching our face and all those things. I just want to make sure that our teachers want to give them all the support that we can, that they can be at appropriate times in their day, that they can be instructing students. Yeah, it's a good time for us to learn why we need to do this and keep it a positive and upbeat thing. And then with regards to hand washing, this is something that's always kind of like concerned me, and now it even comes to what I know in the design of our gym at the high school that we put in air dryers, and we thought that would be really efficient, but they're really worthless to me. I mean, they don't dry your hands. You have to stand there for 10 minutes. So we may have to think about, even though we have them there, because we were looking at a cost savings, that we need to provide people a way to dry their hands so they can move on and we can have a way of disposing that. I don't know. Every time I would go to an event there, I would watch people. They'll walk out because they don't want to use the hand dryers, or they will rinse, so they just go out and are shaking their hands and they're wiping them on their clothes. So
Look at
either
that.
the efficiency of those machines, they're in the wall, they look nice and everything, but they're really kind of like slacking. And in this time of hand hygiene and social distancing and all the things that we want to do, we just need to make sure we have those resources available to our staff. That's all I have.
Kelly?
Just a couple things. First of all, we have the Antelope Valley School Boards Association, and so I'm going to ask that we check to see that this is going to still happen. Oh, your daughter left. I was going to tell her, who doesn't have a great memory of their senior prom, right? So we have crazy times. We were just in the dark a couple months ago, and now we're dealing with this. So I can tell you as an educator, I was in a room today locked with people, and Larry's right. There's information coming at us constantly. So what was even happening at 8 o'clock this morning is different 12 hours from now. And I'm sure it will be different when we wake up tomorrow. So thank you everyone for being patient, and just everyone's going to have to just pay attention to the news that's coming in, and no one wants to have all these things going on for our students. We don't want to disrupt their lives, but there's a lot going on. So we're doing what we can. Of course, we don't want to cancel the prom, we'll do everything we can not to, but let's have a plan B, because I believe every senior needs to go to a prom, even if it's in June. So, so we need to take care of that. Thanks to our staff, because I know, as was I, you guys were all in a meeting today and doing all these things and had a lot going on, so I appreciate all that you do for our students. Tess, it's so nice to have you back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
You've been in our thoughts and prayers, and we're
I appreciate it.
sorry for everything that you've had to deal with, and we love you, and we're glad you're okay.
Thank
You're here. With that, that's all I have.
Tess, your kids missed you. They need you. Their future depends on you. I hope you know that.
I miss them too. Thank you.
We're glad to see you back. First off, I attended the Antelope Valley AB SELPA CAC committee meeting mainly because there are issues that affect one of my children, and their topic was about making transition from school age to adulthood and the programs and trust and financials that go with that. As usual, the person that attends the CAC committee meeting will get a packet off to Yolanda on file for anyone that needs to see that. Brandon, thank you for discussing the voting. I went down there and looked at it, saw how the lunchroom was set up, the bathrooms and everything, and your description was very accurate. And I appreciated that you, especially in your position as a regional political representative, that you show up there and check that out. Thank you for that. Okay, now we're going to do the Ken version of the virus. Okay. I want you to know that I work for an agency that's very progressive. The agency that I work for, our population in town varies from 35,000 at night when everyone leaves, depending on what the pop star is, what president happens to be in town, to 200,000 people. And that's coming and going every day. You have people driving down Santa Monica Boulevard making 100,000 trips a day sometimes of cars. Believe it or not, some of those people actually are coming from LAX, and they're stopping and they're looking at whatever they're going to buy, or maybe they stop at a library or whatever. In the agency I work for, there's a very high expectation, almost an entitlement level expectation of customer service. And you may ask, you know, what does that have to do with here? Well, we also here have a very high level of expectation for customer service. We're quick to be vocal about it, and we're small enough to be vocal about it and expect that we're going to get that kind of service. Now, here's what my day looks like. Starting about a month ago, we were asked to provide staffing impacts as to critical services, critical staffing that could supply those services, how we would operate as managers from home, remote locations. Our financial people are able to take a look at devaluations in currency exchange rates and determine that if that happens and this happens, and our transient occupancy tax would result in this, and then the budget projection for you, Mr. Fallsgraf, from the department you manage, would look like this on this end of it and 2 years out. So they're able to make those calculations just like that. I'm hearing things about how budgets are impacted, how programs are impacted. And again, I work in a place that is basically an inoculation zone. Some people don't fly direct. They stop in 3 or 4 airports around the world. I have no control over whether they're going to go see the doctor when they get back or they're going to report any of that. But that said, I think there's a lot of comparison between the customer service that we give here and the customer service that's expected out of me there. And I think that level of expectation is good, and it drives an agency, especially if you have any cognizance of your brand. Now, that takes us up to the oversight agencies. I think that unless you're living under a rock, the old days of this agency up here, like say the water district that gives us our water, the idea that they're going to take care of you all the time is going away. Trust that. And what they're starting to be more about is they are an insurance agency in case your local plan fails. I want you to think about that, what it means to you in terms of personally where your water comes from, and that type of thing. But I'll tell you, even though they're getting away from being the service provider directly, they will come in, if we fail here, they'll come in and appoint someone to take over the school district, and get rid of everybody and do what they want to do. They're happy to do that. They're also happy to give you knee-jerk reactions from some politician that decides, well, I don't want to be the first agency that allows one person to get sick, so I'm going to make these broad, sweeping decisions that affect local people like us and that type of thing. So I want everybody to remember that when this hits, there are people that depend on this district to supply, for example, the new program of child care before and after. There are parents that travel to work. They expect that there will be a job there for them. You can see something like this from a poor political reaction dive into something that affects the long-term financial liability of families, and I think we want to remember that. The oversight agencies, whatever they're going to do, but as personal, looking at our own personal obligations, if you are sick, don't come in. If you have a cold, when you go to the doctor and say, hey, I need to have this checked out, they have this new thing called return to work. It's not for kids only. You can come back in and say, hey, I went and got checked out. It's just a little cough. But don't go to work and freak everybody out and get them all excited. Next thing, we've worked so hard. You'll see that the superintendent, when he gives his report, it ties back to his relations with the community, the program's relations to the community, and it's by number. That's not by accident. We are going to evaluate him on his ability to meet the plan, the strategic goal plan, not whether I like him or not, because trust me, he's learning not to like me that much. Anyway, that said, understand what our district is about. We're not about supplying online services at the drop of a hat. If you want that, there are plenty of charter schools. I think we've got 14 of them that do it. So, but our model is about putting a kid in a classroom that has a live person there that's dedicated to our school system, our community, and the future of our children. For somebody to walk up and say, you know what, teacher, I don't understand this. I lost something back here, and we get a good response from our teachers. We're not about computers. We're not about robots, and our system is not built out right now to all of a sudden jump online and pretend we're going to give the same quality of education we give in our school every day. So I would hope when we're on social media barking about that we would take a minute. What was the last thing? Oh, the last four. I'm a little bit premature. Understand and respect district policies and procedures. That's exactly what that means. And maintain a respect for the rich history of the district and efforts of others who have served in the past, and that is 100 years of people making our district what it is today and the service level it provides today. So I'm insulted when someone insults our brand. And finally, imagine, I have to be careful with this, imagine I go to work and I'm standing at the water cooler half the day, which, yeah, that makes me employee of the year, right? And I start worrying about the coronavirus, and I talk about somebody, you know, I heard that guys that are like over 60 or almost 60, like in 2 weeks, yeah, I get my present. They kind of get it, especially if they have hair like Falls Graft, and they have, you know, the C6 Steve starter kit, graying beard going on. And you know what? He wasn't here today. Well, that's because I was somewhere else. So all of a sudden the rumor starts, Falls Graft's got the coronavirus. Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And then there are people actually going around putting up signs by people's house. Have you seen this? Infected. Have you seen this? I don't see it here, but you see it elsewhere. That's why I don't live elsewhere. But I want you to think about this. When you're gossiping like that and all over social media with that kind of stuff, think about what it does to the district. Think about what the work it does to the district, the work it does to undermine the district. I want you to, staff, please don't engage in that kind of behavior. I sat in a staff meeting today where we were lectured by an HR person about the liability that comes with an employee doing this type of thing. I was enthralled, believe me. And finally, if you don't get it, you can personally, if you damage someone's reputation this way, they'll be living in your house. There's legal liabilities that go with it. So don't be hysterical, and understand that Larry's not making knee-jerk reactions, but if the state says don't do this, and the county says don't do this, then we have some level of compliance, but that doesn't mean we need to sit back and wait for these agencies to babysit us, because we're getting away from that model. That's enough of my rant, thank you. We're moving on now. Consent agenda. Before we move this in as a unit, does anyone have anything they want to pull? So we're talking about the minutes of the last meeting, the warrant register, the personnel action report, and that's it. We good? Can someone move it in the consent calendar, please? Consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Call the question? Aye. 5-0. Looks like we are at item 10, 10.01, memorandum of understanding. Action item, will someone move it in?
Second.
Go ahead.
Okay, so what the staff is recommending on this, we have an MOU between the Teachers Association and the district. Because of the interim status of site administration, both at the middle school level and the elementary school levels, the teachers union rightfully approached the district and asked that we consider an MOU to address the issue of evaluations. So Article 16 is on evaluations. Subsections A through C would be temporarily eliminated. You would not have to comply with those subsections of the article through the period remainder of this school year. Stipulates in the MOU that for the subsequent school year, 2021, they would go back into effect. And that would allow our permanent administrators, Ms. Toledo, and whoever emerges as the final candidate we recommend to the board for a high district school to complete their evaluations during a subsequent school year in an effective manner. We didn't know when Ms. Toledo would return, and even though she has returned now, there's still some timeline issues that would make it very difficult to, we could comply, but I don't know that that meets the spirit of the language as opposed to just meeting the literal meaning of the language.
Anyone have comments?
Yes, I have a question. With regard, excuse me, with regards to the evaluations, I know there's a timing and a sequence for them to be done, meeting with the, having formal observations over. The concern that I have is if we, I don't have any problem with the MOU, but in their personnel file, is there going to be some notation saying that evaluations for this year were suspended or forego without them not being there? And here's my concern is that I know that when I was preparing and looking at my personnel file, because I needed it for my administrative credentials portfolio, I went there and there were none. And they go like, how can you not have evaluations in your file? So it can have, if they move on to another district. I mean, I just want to make sure that we're covering the bases, that if we're going to, when we do this, if we do this, that there's no detriment to the employee because there's nothing in the file for that period of time. Oh, did we forget or something? Just a little notation or something to account for that.
Sure, I'll follow up with Mr. Schwartz, and I'm sure we can, unless you have an immediate thought on it, we'll follow up on that and see if there's anything we can do to protect our staff. Thank you.
I think public agencies are infamous, some of them, for not providing employee evaluations. Holes in employee evaluations are not fair to the decent employees that are stable and just want to know at the end of the year, hey, I'm moving ahead and I'm appreciated. I think that if you have an evaluation that's coming that is not a good evaluation, I think that the wrong time to communicate that is at the time of the evaluation and that there are regular meetings and stuff. So in the agency I work for, if my evaluation chain below me is not in order, then my evaluation reflects that, and that's not positive. So that said, We understand that people aren't to be penalized and that things happen in life, and I think that the evaluations of the people that are in place have been positive for the most part. So that said, anything else?
No, not, sorry.
Call the question?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. District 11.01, District Stability Statement, second read. I'm going to read this one more time. This will be your last chance to make edits. The goal of this statement was the following. There's nothing worse than going into a meeting and have somebody yelling and freaking out and having to shut the meeting down because they're overrunning the timer, and people being overpowered and all that type of thing. It doesn't create for a cohesive environment, and it undermines everything about the district's strategic plan, and it's a slap in the face to anyone, staff member, administrator, or member of the public that work hard to set, these are the measurables and this is how we're going to rate our brand in the district. So this was very important to me. Progressive agencies have these, and typically what happens is after the flag salute, you read this to set off the tone of the meeting. And so I'm very happy about this, and I'm very proud of the work that the parent groups did to make this a reality. So I'm going to read it one more time, and I'm going to ask the board to support me in its adoption. You are to communicate clearly and concisely with respect for the time of others. Listen objectively, carefully considering the opinions of others. Understand the counterproductive effects of disruptive, demeaning, and intimidating behaviors. Understand and respect district policies and procedures, and maintain a respect for the rich history of the district and the efforts of others who have served in the past. Before I open this up to comment, Lillian, thank you for publishing this in your paper, word for word. I also want to thank you for publishing the strategic plan and all of its sub-planks in your newspaper, word for word. Thank you. Mike.
I appreciate your initiative, Mr. President, and it's short and it's sweet. And I do think it is a nice thing to do to set the tone of the meeting at the outset. So I think it's a good idea and I support you.
Thank you, Mike. As president, I think this was reflective of the way you operate in your meetings as well. Brandon?
I think it's fantastic. I only have one request for the third one. Can we get an Oxford comment in there? That space without a second comma is bugging me.
The answer is no. Tim?
Fair enough.
Hey, this hasn't been adopted yet. I can be anything I want right now.
But no, it's great.
This was written to correct my behavior. See through the smoke screen. Tim?
Nothing. It's good.
I know it is. Thank you. Kelly?
Are we gonna have that posted in here? Like, will we have it posted?
Well, I don't know where I work. I just took a picture today.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would think that when you walk in, it would be like this big. So if you're freaking out and shaking and wearing a raincoat or something, I don't know what you would do. But that's the first thing you would see. The one I have in the commission meeting room in the council chamber is a brass plaque about this big, and you can't miss it, but I'm not expecting that here. I know while I'm president, I will read this every time right after the flag salute. So Larry, that's on you.
You know, my thought was to condense it and put it in before public input. That's something the president could read prior to public input, and then we would have larger sizes made to post in public areas.
Cool. Is this something that would be posted at the school sites?
Yes.
Perfect. Kelly, you happy?
Yeah.
Finally.
Do you have something about short comments in there?
Short comments.
I'm looking for short comments.
Hey, next week you can do what you want. Until then, I will run this. Anything else?
No.
Perfect. So now, discussion over. I'm asking you to, do I have someone that will move in the district stability statement, the adoption of this?
So moved.
Second.
Was that Mike?
Yes.
Perfect, Mike.
I'll
I
second.
like that. Brandon, you'll second?
Yep.
Call the question?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Another Falls Graph victory, yes.
I still want to hold out for that comment.
Are you through? Okay, moving on to important things now. 11.03, second interim financial report for fiscal year 1920. I think we need to move this in.
Move.
Second.
Perfect, thank you. Get it, Larry.
So I'm going to turn this piece over to Ms. Davis for her gold coin potted report.
Okay, actually, Susan, can you put the other document, the one that's like a PowerPoint? Although, I will say, so there are two documents attached to this. There is what is called the SACS, the School Accounting, you think I can't even actually think exactly what SACS stands for, I just know it by its acronym at this point. But at any rate, there's this document that is the actual required legal one to be posted. It has all the details. I encourage people to read it sometimes. It's a lot of very interesting information. The one that is probably more user-friendly is this. You've probably gotten very used to it, so I will skip through many of the slides quickly. Just a reminder that our fiscal reporting cycle is constantly cycling around. We have the adopted budget actually in June for July 1st. We have first interim that always has to be by December 15th. We're currently at second interim, and then we will have a adopted budget and estimated actuals coming in June. So we are currently at second interim. It has to be presented to the board and the public by March 15th, but it represents actual transactions through January 31st. So next slide, please. Second interim, again, what and why. It is a required report by state law to make sure that we're on track for our expenditures and that we continue to have a budget that will be positively certified, meaning that we have enough funding for this current year and 2 additional years out so that we have stability in our district. There are 2 other types of certifications you can have: qualified, which negative, which means that you potentially will not have enough funding for either the current year or the out years. Again, our budget and funds, we'll go through this, we'll mostly skip this, but there is the general fund. And the general fund, there are both restricted and unrestricted funding. Ever since LCFF, there are mostly unrestricted funds, which means that we can use them for any purpose that the board and district deem appropriate. As defined by our LCAP. Restricted funds, there are a few still. Those are for special purposes, and then we have other funds such as cafeteria fund, maintenance fund, construction fund, and developer fee funds. Next slide. Again, just a reminder that under local control funding formula, LCFF, our funds are generated on a per student basis. There's a base for every student, and then there are additional funds generated by students are in certain grade levels or with certain demographic features that may require additional support. So some things that are important is that we make sure that we count our students in grades K through 3 and make sure that our class sizes do not exceed 26. And then additionally that we're counting our students who are English learners, foster youth, and low-income students because they generate 20% additional funding of the base that we can use to support their needs. Next slide. Things that we use as guiding assumptions is our strategic plan. So things that support student achievement, instruction, community engagement, safety, and student connectedness. When we say utilization of fiscal capital, in other words, that we're using our money appropriately to achieve those other goals, and that we are maintaining our reserves. Next slide. Our LCAP goals, you guys can read those, you've seen them a billion times. We have 7 of them. We'll be bringing you updates, and it is our hope to align them more closely with, in number, with our strategic plan as we go into a new LCAP cycle. Next slide. Our assumptions, our main guiding assumptions are enrollment. This year, based on our October numbers, 1,039 students. Our funded ADA, which is a function of our enrollment times the percentage of time students are actually in their seats. So we have 1,039, but we actually are getting funding based on 1,028. That is the higher of current or prior year. So it will, we actually do have lower ADA right now, because if you multiply 95%, or actually 94% right now, times 1039, you'll see it's lower, but it's always current or prior year, whichever is greater. So we're benefiting from that right now. We have included in our budget the STRS and PERS rate, which is retirement for our employees, and our unduplicated pupils, so English learners, foster youth, and low income. We have 582 out of 1039, which is approximately 54%. That does give us extra funding under LCFF. Other things, we have not begun negotiations yet, although we have considered that. And oversight and additional fees are at 3%. That's unchanged. No fees transferred for capital improvement projects, and we're going to be able to maintain our general fund. Next slide. So this is a summary of our general fund. So Fund 01, it is the unrestricted and restricted combined. Since first interim, we have an increase in revenues of about $200,000. That increase in revenue is based on the fact that we have an additional count of students who meet unduplicated criteria. That has increased since the last, thanks to Paulette updating our cafeteria students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch. Our expenditures have actually decreased slightly, so that helps us out a bit. Excess and deficit, we actually have we've actually improved a little bit on that. And so our ending balance is improved a little bit. No, I'm sorry, actually it's decreased a little bit, $36,000. So it's actually a very small amount in comparison to our total budget, but slightly decreased. Next slide. Okay, revenue summary. Again, this is the breakout of it. Most of our funding comes from local control funding formula. There was a slight increase of about $114,000 that was mostly generated from the increase in unduplicated pupils. Again, there is a change and increase in our revenue of about $200,000 for that. And then down below we have a chart indicating, because we do have a large part of our revenue coming from local revenue, which is related to our charter school oversight. Those numbers are presented on the lower graph. And at this point, we have not updated them for end of year P2. Even though there are changes in their enrollment, we leave it in prior year until we get certified numbers. So next slide. Again, expenditures. There is a bit of a change in our salaries because we've had staffing changes throughout the year. Those are the main things. We have a slight increase in the area of services. Of the more notable amounts, because we have been investing a lot in our staff this year with trainings. That actually, as of today, as we've discussed earlier, that may not end up being quite as high in the services because so many conferences have been canceled. Next slide. This is the one that's probably most important as we look out into the multiple years. The only changes really that we've made in this compared to first interim are in the areas of assigned, which is in the orangish color, and it says assigned. There's an increase there because we do have some potential litigation that we've assigned money. Assigning money means that we're not necessarily spending it. It's like putting it in a separate savings account, same as if in your own home you might have a separate, you might put a little extra if you're planning for a vacation or something like that. So we've increased the amount in the assigned to prepare for any potential litigation we may have. And if it doesn't come to pass, then we'll be able to free that back up into the general fund. Everything else is left the same. Again, we have not begun negotiations yet, and we have left our oversight and service fees the same as they were previously. Next slide. Summary of other funds. Fund 13 is our cafeteria fund. A slight change change there, but we're still going to end the year with a significant for cafeteria fund ending balance. Paulette does an excellent job of managing our cafeteria funding. Fund 17, we really don't put anything in there. What that's used for is if, rather than assigning money, you can put money there to set it aside for board goals. We don't use that fund necessarily for that. We just leave it in our general fund. Slide. Other funds related to capital projects, we have Fund 35. There is just a little bit of money left in there from Vasquez. When we settle with Silver Creek, which is responsible for our concession building, we're finalizing with them a negotiated adjusted price. We're negotiating with them for a reduction in the cost because it took them a little bit longer. That will clear out that account, and we'll be ending that account this year. Next slide. Other funds are related to maintenance and capital facilities. So Fund 14 is on actually deferred maintenance, so things like roofs and major projects. Capital facilities fund is 25, where we put our developer fees. There's a slight increase there. We've actually had a pretty good year with developer fees, a lot of people coming in. And then reserve for capital outlay is Fund 40. Again, that's what we use for to help support work we do perhaps at this campus or major projects. So no major changes in any of those. Next slide. And then in summary, the big points out of this, you guys can read it for yourself, but the major things are just, we need to remember that we do get a fairly good amount of money from our unduplicated pupils. About 50% of our students are identified in one or more categories of English learners, foster youth, or low income, and that does help provide additional money. Those funds do need to be targeted to those students, but it does really help us out. About half of our students meet one or more of those criteria. We're currently in a declining enrollment pattern. 43 of the multi-years in the 3-year, we project 43. It was actually a reduction of 43 actual students this year, and projected 30. I think it's about 35 and 38 in future years. We've accounted for STRS and PERS increases, and then we just want to keep our general fund reserves at a good level, because right now we can borrow from ourselves rather than borrowing externally for cash. And cash borrowing is kind of your own. When you have a lot of bills, you want to make sure you have enough in months where you may not have as much revenue. So we are going to make a recommendation for a positive certification based on our fund balance. So any questions that I can answer?
Mike.
Yes. So first, I'd like to thank you. I don't know, I've been on the board 5 or 6 years, and honestly, it takes about 5 or 6 years to really learn the cycle and how to read the reports, but the consistency and your training over the years, the last few years has actually helped. So I can actually read this in about 30 seconds.
Awesome.
And that is, I'm thanking you, because
you're welcome.
You've taught me how to do that. Having said that, on chart 11, I did have one question.
Okay.
So obviously the budget isn't materially changed. It changed by about $30,000.
Right.
Because extra revenues were offset by the extra expenses, or the extra expenses were largely offset by the extra revenue. A portion per the top bullet of the extra expenses, whereas the salaries increases due to sub-use. Okay, there's nothing you can do about it. You have to have subs.
Right.
So you pay the teacher who's out, and you pay the substitute who comes in. And the differential pay is similar, right? That's when somebody's acting in a different role, and so they receive is that what differential pay is?
Different role, or if somebody's out ill for an extended period of time, they exhaust all their leaves, and they might be in a differential pay status.
Okay.
One of the other things is, and it's related to increasing, those are some of the reasons, differential pay status. The other thing is that in some cases, because we've decided to invest while we can in training staff, it's staff coverage for if they go to a training. In some cases, we've released people to do, I know that in several of the classrooms, teachers have had release time to be able to plan together following professional development.
That gets booked in this differential pay?
That's not differential pay, so that's kind of a lump together.
Subs come in.
Subs come in.
Of course.
as a line in there. So in some cases, there's differential pay, like for example, if a teacher is a designee for an administrator.
Right.
If they're out.
That's what
But
I
in
thought.
some cases, for example, in Tessa's school, the teachers go to training, they say we'd really like to have, a half a day to plan together, so you'll have 3 or 4 teachers out, covered by a substitute.
I understand, so I totally get substitutes. Differential pay, which was the question I was having.
Okay,
Because of all this, that's the only little piece I don't understand the terminology. Differential pay
okay,
is when somebody's stepping in at a different job that's above their pay grade, and so there's a,
it's about, I think it's 10%. So say if you're a teacher, you get 10% above, I believe that's what the rate
if
is. I can
you're
get back.
acting in a different capacity.
Yes.
Okay, so my point is, these things are all, well, so my point is one, had we not had the extra revenue, then this category of cost would have meant more than a negligible $30,000
The net would have been different.
degradation, had we not had the extra revenue.
Mhm.
My other point is you can't really predict these things, they happen. So all I'm perhaps suggesting is in the future,
Mhm.
we budget for, based on maybe past actuals, we budget a little pot of money for this. That, just as a suggestion. If everybody's doing their normal jobs and their normal roles and there's not subs, then we know exactly what it's gonna
Got
cost.
it.
But this just says to me that there's a potential pressure out there based on this year's history, I don't know how it compares to other years' history, of several $100,000.
Mhm.
And so we're fine this year, I'm just maybe suggesting we think about
Mhm.
budgeting for that in future years.
Okay, makes
And
sense.
so should it
Got it.
materialize, then we won't have to rely on extra revenue to cover it.
Mm-hmm,
Right.
If it doesn't materialize, then it's a little bangy at the end of the year.
mm-hmm,
Okay, that's all.
got it.
Thank you very much.
Brandon,
I got nothing. This looks fantastic. Thank you, Lynn.
Tim,
Thank you for your hard work, man. It looks good.
Welcome.
Callie,
Same, you just do great reports, are easy to understand, so thank you.
okay, thank you all. Couple things I want to point out. Lynn's role is to report reality. Lynn's role is to, if there needs to be something put in a fund that anticipates a problem, then that's what Lynn does, and the board supports her in doing that. I would suggest that everyone recall that about 25% of the district's budget that is needed tomorrow morning to operate the school is dependent on charter revenue. I think that if you look at the chart, there's about $6 million there, and I think that if you look at the news very closely, you will discover that someone is looking to recover every bit of money that this district has ever been paid in excess of what the actual cost to do the oversight is. That is very sobering. So if you're astute, you will watch the balance that is in the local revenue part. To Mike's point, if you are going to look at costs and start cutting down and looking where things are, and you're cognizant of our brand and what our goals are for this strategic plan, you want to provide continuum in education. You don't want long-term subs. You don't want that kind of thing. But of course, things happen and people have lives and that type of thing. But to Mike's point, if you do historic regressions on how many trees fell out of the sky last year and the 3 years before and how much I had to pay in an emergency response, that's a standard budget calculation for me. So to Mike's point, when we start fine-tuning what's going on, I think we look at historic regression as a means of informing this thing. But that said, I've told you everything you need to know, and we're very transparent up here, and we encourage Lynn to write the numbers down, whatever they are and whatever they mean. And if you're astute, you'll look at those numbers and kind of see what challenges could be on the forefront. Thank you, Lynn. Do we need to take action on accepting this report?
We do.
I suggest. We've already moved it in. Do we have support of the second interim financial report?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Good job, Lynn. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
We've already moved it.
Yes.
I thought.
11.2 04, Sullivan Hill, Res and Engel engagement agreement. Will someone move that in?
Move. Second.
You want to summarize this, Larry?
Sure, so this is a law firm that we are recommending that the board approve. We're asking for their legal services, which will consist of defending the district against claims against solely our district in the receivership case pending in the San Diego Superior Court, case number SCD 266439, people of the state of California versus McManus and others, Superior Court case brought by the district attorney for the county of San Diego. So there's basically a receivership. The name of the receiver is Kipperman, and because it's into bankruptcy and receivership law, by the way, when I say bankruptcy, I'm not talking about our district, just to clarify. We need that type of attorney. It's a very specific type of law that our general counsel does not operate in.
Any questions from the board members or comments?
Thank you for the clarification. No bankruptcy. I got nothing.
Anyone else? Could you flip to the last page of this, please? Maybe the last 2 pages. Back up just a little bit. Back up. One more back, please. Okay, no, I'm wrong. Go ahead. One more page. There we go. Now, as you look at those names, this is in legal jargon, a means to identify who your adversaries might be and who your parties of interest might be. This is a legal case. So you see people like the district attorney for the county of San Diego, the assistant district attorney. You see people above that used to stand at this stand right here and want us to sponsor them. And that type of thing. So if you're a student at all, you'll connect my last comments to what you're seeing here and inform yourself. Okay? So I've said what I need to say, but this is going to result in some legal action, and once it begins, a lot of that stuff ends up in the back room, and you all know that. So thank you for making this transparent to the public.
Absolutely.
Do I have, we've moved this in. Call to question on approving this agreement?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Thank you. 11.05, Resolution 1920.09 to order a biennial governing board election. Can someone move this in?
So moved.
Second.
Larry?
So it's staff's recommendation that the board approve. There's an election to be held on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020, but we need the LA County Registrar Recorder, County Clerk, to perform all the duties incident to the preparation for and holding the above-mentioned election. The Aadusd Unified School District will pay the cost of the election. If any agency holds an election on November 3rd, 2020, the district shall pay its prorate share pertaining to the conduct of the election and shall be under the provisions of the appropriate sections of the Education and Election Codes. There's more language in there, but we need to approve the election.
This is a formality. Any questions?
I have a question. Other than my seat, who else is up?
This one, all three.
Oh, us at the end.
Yep.
It's,
Clearing back into the.
I vote yes anyway, I'm just curious.
So there will be 3 seats open, this is an opportunity for me to thank everyone for their service and their dedication, and it's worth the money you get, right? But that said, if you throw your name in the hat, I would suggest you understand what you're diving into. That said, do I have a vote on this?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. 12.01, future agenda items. Larry, do you have any comments about these things?
I have one comment. These have been on there, sitting there. We're going to start pulling these off as they doing over the course of the next couple of months. But one that's not on there, we don't need to add it, but I do want to make the board aware that on the next board meeting, we're going to be bringing forward SOMAS. If you recall, the board gave Ms. David and I direction to look into any other potential bidders for solar. And so we had the one SOMAS that came before this board approximately a year and a half ago. About a year, okay, and so subsequent to that, I think it was Mr. Fox that brought out the idea publicly that we should look at a couple other potential vendors, contractors. They're going to share, we vetted out clearly a couple of them. Nobody can truly provide the service that they do because of the unique way they're able to work with DSA and have projects pre-approved essentially, and they really have a unique tool. So we're going to bring them back for information only on March 26th, and then at the first board meeting in April for a recommendation by staff to the board.
May I just, I know this is not a discussion, but just a point of clarification. Actually, it was Miss Iyer, Jackie, who suggested we shop around, not me. My suggestion was, I support this entirely, was just please make sure you work with the school site councils, with the little groups we have at each school that care about what that school looks like, just to make sure that there's buy-in, to some of the proposals.
Okay.
In the parking lots, it's a no-brainer. Some of the other proposals put them maybe in quads as shade structures, and I just want to make sure that the site councils have had their discussion.
We'll make sure and do that.
Okay. The calendar, district calendar, please.
I think that's right.
So the next board meeting is March 26th. And the next one after that is April 9th. Or our big calendar, sorry. Is that what you want to see?
You know it.
You're talking about the event calendar, right?
There you go.
You say April 9th, March 26th, April 9th?
Correct.
So I would suggest if you have anything in the district that you want on the calendar, there was a time when it would only show the board meetings. Now it's populated. If there's a mechanism to populate it, I don't like looking at a 2-inch screen on my phone to find out what's happening that I can stop at on the way home. So if you are in charge of something and you want it on the calendar, I would think that it's you have a role in helping to report what that is and get it on the calendar and make sure the accuracy of the stuff is right, especially the community groups, auxiliary groups, okay? All right, I think we're done there. Moving on, 14.01, report of action taken in closed session. There was no action taken in closed session this evening. Do I will move to adjourn the meeting?
Move. Second.
Call the question.
Aye.
Meeting adjournment is at 8:49.